A little boy sat alone at a cold Detroit bus stop, clutching a worn backpack and a drawing of his mother with wings. People walked past him, judging, assuming, until he said something that made one man stop cold. "My mom works all day, but they won't pay her." That one sentence didn't just tell a story. It exposed a truth no one wanted to see. And the man who heard it? He wasn't just a passerby. He was someone powerful enough to change everything, but only because a child chose to speak up. What happened next would uncover a hidden system, break a silence that lasted too long, and turn one act of quiet kindness into something no one in that room would ever forget. The wind cut through the street like a dull blade, dragging scraps of paper along the cracked sidewalk and rattling the loose metal sign above the bus stop, and the neon light overhead flickered in uneven pulses, buzzing like it was tired of staying alive. It painted everything beneath it in a weak bluish glow: the peeling bench, the rusted trash can, and the small figure sitting quietly at the edge. Jaden pulled his hoodie tighter around his face, though it didn't do much to stop the cold. His sneakers were worn thin, the soles nearly smooth, and every time he shifted his feet, he could feel the chill rising from the concrete. He hugged his backpack close to his chest, like it was something alive, something that could keep him warm if he held on tight enough. Cars passed by in quick flashes of light, their headlights sweeping over him for a second before disappearing into the dark. No one stopped. No one slowed down. A woman walking her dog glanced at him, her pace quickening just slightly, and a man in a thick coat paused across the street, watching for a moment, before shaking his head and moving on. Their eyes carried the same silent question: what was a boy like that doing alone at this hour? Jaden noticed, but he didn't react. He was used to that look. The kind that saw him but didn't really see him. The kind that already decided who he was before he even opened his mouth. He unzipped his backpack carefully and pulled out a small, bent notebook. The cover was soft from use, the corners folded and worn. Inside, the pages were filled with drawings, some messy, some careful, all important. He flipped to a blank page and took out a blue crayon, the paper peeling slightly at the edge where it had been used too many times. For a moment, he just stared at the page. Then he began to draw. His movements were slow, deliberate. At first, the outline of a woman, tall, standing straight. Then the apron, the one she wore every day, tied tight around her waist. He added her hair, her smile, soft, even when she was tired. Then he paused. The crayon hovered above the page, and then, almost like it was the most natural thing in the world, he drew wings behind her. Big ones, strong ones, stretching out wide like they could carry everything. A car drove by, its bass thumping through the windows, shaking the air for a moment before fading away. Jaden leaned back slightly, looking at the drawing. His fingers smudged a bit of blue across the page, but he didn't mind. It still looked like her. It still felt like her. A shadow fell across the edge of the bench. Jaden didn't look up right away. The man who had stepped closer didn't speak either. He stood there for a second, like he wasn't sure if he should interrupt, like he didn't want to break something quiet and fragile. Then, slowly, he sat down on the far end of the bench. Not too close, just enough to share the space. Jaden glanced up briefly. The man looked ordinary. Mid-40s maybe. Clean jacket, dark jeans, nothing flashy. His posture was relaxed, but there was something about the way he looked around. Not nervous, not distracted. Just aware. Like he noticed things other people didn't. They sat in silence for a moment. The wind passed again, colder this time. Jaden returned to his drawing, pressing the crayon harder now, tracing over the wings to make them darker. The man's eyes shifted to the page. He didn't comment, didn't ask questions. He just watched. And somehow, that felt different. And most people either ignored him or asked too much. Where's your mom? You okay? You lost? But this man just sat there like it was normal, like a kid drawing at a bus stop at night didn't need explaining. Jaden spoke without looking up. My mom works all day. His voice was soft, almost swallowed by the hum of passing cars. The man turned his head slightly, listening. Jaden kept coloring. But they won't pay her. The words hung in the air, simple and heavy at the same time. No anger, no drama, just truth. The man's gaze shifted from the drawing to Jaden's face. There was no disbelief there, no quick assumption, just something quieter, something deeper. What do you mean? The man asked gently. Jaden shrugged, like it was obvious. She works at the BBQ place by the corner. She's there all day. Sometimes night, too. He pressed the crayon down harder, the blue almost breaking. But the boss keeps saying next week. He looked up now just for a second. He always says next week. The man nodded slowly, like he understood more than what was being said. What's your mom's name? He asked. Monica. Jaden looked back at the drawing, tapping the crayon lightly against the page. She smiles at home, he added. Then, after a pause, quieter this time. But not at work. The neon light flickered again, buzzing overhead. The man leaned back slightly, his eyes still on the drawing, on the wings. She looks strong, he said. Jaden nodded. She is. Another car passed, then another. The city kept moving like it always did. But on that bench, something had slowed down. The man looked out toward the street, then back at the boy. Where is she now? He asked. At work. You waiting for her? Jaden nodded again. She gets off late. A gust of wind pushed through, colder than before. Jaden shivered, pulling his hoodie tighter. The man noticed. He hesitated for just a second. Then he stood up. Jaden's eyes followed him, cautious. The man stepped a few feet away, pulling out his phone. He spoke quietly, his voice low enough that Jaden couldn't hear the words. It didn't take long. When he came back, he didn't explain anything. He just sat down again. Same distance, so. Same quiet presence. Jaden looked at him, curious now. You don't have to stay, he said. The man gave a small smile. I know. Silence settled again. But it felt different now. He wasn't just a stranger passing through. He had chosen to sit, to listen, or to stay. The neon light flickered once more, then steadied. Jaden looked down at his drawing, then carefully tore the page out of the notebook. He held it for a moment, then extended it toward the man. The man blinked, surprised. For you, Jaden said. The man took it slowly, like it was something fragile. He looked at the drawing, the woman with wings, standing tall. Thank you, he said quietly. Jaden shrugged. She's a superhero, he said. The man's eyes lingered on the wings. Then he looked back at Jaden. I believe you. In the distance, the sound of a bus engine began to grow louder. Headlights appeared at the end of the street, cutting through the dark. Jaden stood up, grabbing his backpack. The man stood too. The bus pulled in with a long sigh of air, doors creaking open. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Jaden stepped forward. He paused at the door, turning back just slightly. You gonna come back? He asked. The man met his eyes. Yes, he said. Jaden studied him for a second, like he was trying to decide if that answer meant anything. Then he nodded and climbed onto the bus. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. The man remained standing under the flickering neon light, the drawing still in his hand. The wind picked up again, but he didn't seem to notice. His eyes were fixed on the blue crayon wings, and for the first time that night, his expression had changed. Not just curiosity, not just concern, something else. Something quieter. Something that didn't leave. The kind of feeling that doesn't fade when the bus drives away. The kind that stays and starts something. Who exactly had chosen to stay that night? And why did it feel like everything was about to change? The bus rumbled through the wet streets of Detroit, its windows fogged at the edges, the city outside blurred into streaks of orange and gray. Jaden sat near the back, his backpack resting on his lap, his fingers tracing the zipper over and over like he was holding onto something steady. The warmth inside the bus felt uneven, too hot near the heater, too cold by the doors. A few passengers sat scattered, quiet, tired faces, staring ahead or down at their phones. No one spoke. The only sounds were the low hum of the engine and the occasional squeak of brakes. Jaden pressed his forehead lightly against the glass. Each stop passed slowly. Each block felt longer than the last. He kept thinking about the man at the bus stop, the way he didn't leave, the way he listened. Most people didn't do that. Most people didn't stay. The bus turned onto a narrower street, the lights dimmer here, the buildings older. Paint peeled from the sides of houses, and a flickering street lamp buzzed above a cracked sidewalk. The driver called out the stop without looking back. Jaden stood quickly. "Thank you," he said, his voice small but polite. The driver gave a tired nod. The doors opened with a hiss. Cold air rushed in. Jaden stepped off, pulling his hoodie tighter again as the bus pulled away behind him. Across the street, a faded sign glowed through the night. Lawson's Pit BBQ. The smell hit him before he even crossed the road. Smoke, grease, and something sweet that lingered in the air. It was the kind of smell that stuck to your clothes, your skin, your hair, the kind that never really left. Inside, the place was loud. Orders shouted, plates clattered, the sharp scrape of metal against grill. Monica Hayes moved through it all like she had memorized every step. Her apron was stained, her hair pulled back tight, a few strands stuck to her forehead from sweat. Her hands moved fast, too fast sometimes, balancing trays, refilling drinks, wiping down tables before the next customer even sat down. "Table 3 needs sauce," someone called. "I got it," she answered without looking up. Her voice was calm. Always calm, even when the rush hit, even when the orders piled up, even when the kitchen fell behind and customers started tapping their fingers on tables with that familiar impatience. She smiled when she needed to, nodded when someone complained, apologized even when it wasn't her fault. "Sorry about the wait. Let me fix that for you. Thank you for your patience." The words came easy now, too easy. At the register, Rick Lawson leaned against the counter, flipping through a stack of receipts with one hand while scrolling on his phone with the other. He barely looked up as Monica passed by. "Hey," she said, stopping just long enough to catch his attention. Rick sighed, slow and annoyed, like the sound alone was an answer. "What?" Monica hesitated, just for a second. "I wanted to ask about the pay," she said carefully. "It's been 3 weeks." Rick didn't look at her. "Yeah," he muttered. "Systems behind." She nodded, though her fingers tightened slightly around the tray she was holding. "I understand," she said. I need to pay rent this week." Rick finally looked up. Not with concern, not with understanding. Just irritation. "I said next week, Monica." His tone sharpened on her name, like he'd already said too much. She swallowed. "You said that last week, too." The air shifted slightly. Not loud, not dramatic, but enough. Rick straightened a little, his eyes narrowing. "You questioning me now?" "No," she said quickly. I'm just asking. Rick chuckled under his breath. That's funny, he said. Sounded like questioning. Monica held his gaze for a moment, then lowered it. I'm just trying to make sure things are okay, she said. They are, he snapped. You got a job, don't you? She nodded again, that same quiet nod. Rick leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough that it wouldn't carry too far. Oh, plenty of people would take your spot, he said. You know that, right? The words hung there, heavy, familiar. Monica didn't respond. She didn't argue, didn't push. She just nodded one more time. I understand, she said. And then she turned back to the floor like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just been reminded exactly where she stood. Across the room, a customer raised his hand. Miss, we need napkins over here. I'm coming, Monica called, already moving. The moment was over, or at least it looked that way. But something stayed behind, something quiet, something that didn't go away just because she smiled again. The door chimed. Jaden stepped inside. The warmth hit him immediately, along with the noise and the smell. He spotted her right away. He always did. Hey, oh baby, Monica said as soon as she saw him, her face softening in a way it didn't for anyone else. You okay? She asked. He nodded. Yeah. You eat? He hesitated, then nodded again. Yeah. She smiled. Good. She reached out quickly, brushing his shoulder as she passed by. Sit in the back, okay? I'll be there in a minute. Jaden moved to a small table near the corner, the one that wobbled slightly if you leaned on it too hard. He placed his backpack down and sat quietly, watching her move, watching her smile, watching her carry more than anyone else seemed to notice. A plate slipped in the kitchen. Someone cursed. Rick shouted something from the counter. Monica didn't react. She just kept moving, like she always did. Jaden reached into his bag and pulled out his notebook again, and he flipped to a new page, picked up the blue crayon, and started drawing. Across the room, Rick counted a small stack of cash, sliding a few bills into his pocket before dropping the rest into the register. No one said anything. No one ever did. Jaden's eyes flickered up for just a second, then back down to the page. He pressed the crayon harder this time. Darker, stronger lines. The wings got bigger, wider, like they had to be, like they had to carry more than before. From the front door, someone stepped in, quiet, unnoticed, at least by most. Daniel Reed stood just inside, taking in the room with a single glance. The noise, the movement, the imbalance. His eyes found Monica, then Jaden, then Rick. He didn't say anything, didn't announce himself. He just walked in and took a seat, like he belonged there, like he had every reason to stay. And this time, he wasn't just listening anymore. Daniel Reed sat near the middle of the diner, close enough to see everything, far enough not to draw attention. The seat creaked slightly as he leaned back, his eyes moving slowly across the room like he was memorizing it. The glow from the overhead lights gave everything a tired yellow tint. Grease stains on the walls. A clock that ticked louder than it should. The hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. It was the kind of place that had been running too long without anyone really taking care of it. But what stood out wasn't the building. It was the rhythm. Monica moved like someone trying to stay ahead of something she couldn't quite outrun. Every step measured, every smile practiced. She checked on tables before they asked. She refilled drinks before they were empty. Apologized before anyone complained. And still, people complained. "Excuse me!" A man barked from the front table. "This brisket's cold." "I'm so sorry," Monica said immediately, already reaching for the plate. "Let me fix that for you right away." Her tone didn't crack, not once. Daniel watched her closely. Not just what she did, but what she didn't do. She didn't argue, didn't roll her eyes, didn't push back. She absorbed it. All of it. Like she had learned somewhere along the way that pushing back only made things worse. A chair scraped loudly behind him. "Hey, watch it," someone muttered. Daniel turned slightly. A teenage boy had bumped into an older man while trying to squeeze past. The older man shook his head, annoyed, muttering something under his breath. Normal. Everyday tension. Nothing unusual. Except Daniel's eyes flickered back to Monica. She noticed everything, even when she pretended not to. Her glance lingered on the exchange for just a second longer than necessary. Then she turned away. Back to work. Jaden sat in the corner, small and quiet, his notebook open again. He didn't look up much, just drew, occasionally glancing at his mom, like he was checking that she was still there, still holding it together. Daniel's gaze softened for a moment, then shifted. Rick stood behind the counter again, counting money. Not fast, not careful, just casual, like it didn't matter if anyone saw. He peeled off a few bills, sliding them into his back pocket before tossing the rest into the register drawer. Daniel noticed the timing, the pattern. When the line got busy, and Rick stepped away. When it slowed down, he counted. And every time, some of it didn't make it into the register. Daniel leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. The waitress approached. Not Monica. Another woman, older, tired eyes, moving slower. "What can I get you?" she asked. "Brisket plate," Daniel said. "And sweet tea." She nodded, scribbling it down. "You new around here?" she asked casually. Daniel gave a small shrug. "Passing through." She gave a half smile. "Most people just pass through." She walked away before he could respond. Daniel sat back again. His eyes drifted toward Jaden. The boy was pressing hard on the crayon again, filling in the wings darker than before. Daniel stood, slowly. No rush, no sudden movement. He walked toward the back. Jaden noticed him this time. No, didn't look scared, just curious. Daniel stopped a few feet away. "That's her again?" he asked, nodding toward the drawing. Jaden nodded. "Yeah." Daniel crouched slightly, lowering himself to the boy's level without invading his space. "She looks strong." Jaden didn't hesitate. "She is." Daniel glanced toward Monica again. "She works here every day?" Jaden nodded. "Sometimes 2 shifts." Daniel's brow tightened slightly. "That's a lot." Jaden shrugged. "She says it's okay." A pause, then, "But she looks tired when she thinks I'm not looking." Daniel's eyes flickered back to the drawing. The wings. Bigger now. Stronger. Like they had to carry more weight than before. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. "Jaden." "I'm Daniel." Jaden nodded, accepting that. No questions, no suspicion, no. And kids didn't care about titles. Only about how you showed up. A loud voice cut through the room. "Monica!" Rick, sharp, impatient. She turned immediately. "Yeah?" "Table 6 hasn't been cleared." "I don't care what you just got," Rick snapped. "Handle it." The room went quiet for a second. Not silent, but aware. Monica nodded. "I got it." And she moved. Faster now. Jaden's crayon slowed, then stopped. He didn't look at Daniel. Didn't say anything. But his shoulders shifted. Just slightly. Like something inside him tightened. Daniel noticed. "Hey," he said softly. Jaden didn't respond right away. Then, without looking up. He talks to her like that a lot. Daniel's jaw tightened. Does she ever say anything back? Jaden shook his head. She says we need the job. The words were simple, but they carried something heavier, something learned, not taught. Daniel stood slowly. His gaze moved back to Rick, still behind the counter, still in control, still untouched. The waitress returned with Daniel's plate, setting it down with a quiet thud. Here you go. Thank you, Daniel said. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a bill and placing it on the table. More than enough. She glanced at it, surprised. You sure? Daniel nodded. Yeah. She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. He does that a lot, she whispered, barely audible. What you saw. Daniel didn't react outwardly. Why doesn't anyone say anything? He asked. She gave a small, tired laugh. Say something. And then what? Her eyes flickered toward Rick. Some of us can't afford to lose this. She straightened, stepping away before anyone noticed. Daniel sat back down, the food in front of him untouched. The noise returned to normal. But something had shifted. Not outside. Inside. His fingers tapped lightly against the table. Once. Twice. Then stopped. Across the room, Monica wiped down a table, her movements steady, controlled, practiced, like she had done this 1,000 times, like she would do it 1,000 more. Unless something changed. Daniel picked up his fork, took a bite. Didn't taste it. His eyes moved again, watching, tracking, learning. And this time, he wasn't just seeing the story. He was starting to understand it. The system, the silence, the reason it kept going, because no one stopped it, because no one could, because no one stayed long enough to care. Daniel set his fork down, but his decision didn't come loud, didn't come dramatic. It settled quietly, like something locking into place. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, looked at the screen for a second, then typed one message. Short, direct. He hit send, put the phone back. Across the room, Jaden looked up again. Their eyes met. Daniel gave a small nod. Not a promise. Not yet. But something close. Something that didn't leave. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows. Inside, nothing looked different. Same noise, same movement, same routine. But beneath it, something had already begun. And no one in that room, not Rick, not the customers, not even Monica, realized just how much was about to change. The dinner rush slowed into a heavy lull, plates stacked near the sink. The grill hissed quieter now, the smoke thinning into the air like it was finally allowed to breathe. Conversations dropped into low murmurs. Chairs scraped softer against the floor. Monica exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. She wiped her hands on her apron and leaned against the counter for just a second too long, just enough to feel the weight in her shoulders. Then she straightened again, like rest was something she couldn't afford to get used to. Daniel watched it all, not just the work, but the moments in between. The way she stretched her fingers when no one was looking. The way she checked the clock but never said anything about it. The way she smiled at Jaden, even when her eyes looked like they hadn't slept in days. A bell chimed as the front door opened. Cold air slipped inside. An older man stepped in, unbundled in a worn coat that had seen too many winters. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled the door shut behind him. He looked around, uncertain, not like a regular, more like someone deciding whether he belonged there at all. Rick glanced up briefly, then looked back down. No greeting. No acknowledgement. The man hesitated near the entrance, then slowly made his crouch to a small table by the wall. Monica saw him. Of course she did. She always did. "I'll be right with you," she said, her voice warm, steady. The man nodded, sitting carefully, like even the chair might give out beneath him. Daniel's eyes followed the exchange, then shifted to Rick. Still nothing. No interest. No care. Daniel stood. He walked toward the counter, casual, unhurried. Rick didn't look up. "Yeah?" he muttered. Daniel placed his hand lightly on the counter. "Whatever he orders," Daniel said, nodding toward the older man. "Put it on my tab." Rick looked up this time, eyes narrowing slightly. "Why?" Daniel shrugged. "Just do it." Rick studied him for a second, like he was trying to figure out what kind of man would say something like that. Then he smirked. "Your money." He turned away. Didn't ask another question. Daniel didn't push, didn't explain. He stepped back, returning to his table like nothing had happened. No announcement, no attention, just done. At the back, Monica approached the older man. "What can I get for you?" she asked gently. The man hesitated, glancing at the menu like he was calculating something. "Just coffee," he said. "That's fine." Monica smiled softly. "You sure?" He nodded. "Oh, that's all I need." Monica didn't argue, but she didn't write it down either. "I'll be right back," she said. A few minutes later, she returned, not just with coffee, but with a full plate. Brisket, bread, sides. The man blinked in confusion. "It's taken care of," Monica said. He looked at her, then at the food, then back at her again. "Thank you," he said quietly. Monica just nodded. "You're welcome." Across the room, Daniel watched. Not the action, but her reaction. She didn't look surprised, didn't look impressed. Like kindness wasn't something new to her. Like it was just what you did. Jaden noticed too. He leaned slightly over his table, whispering, "You did that?" Daniel glanced at him, gave a small smile. "Maybe." Jaden grinned, then looked back at his mom. She does that too," he said. Daniel nodded. "I know." The door opened again, this time louder. Two men stepped in, their jackets expensive, their voices already too loud for the room. They didn't wait to be seated, just dropped into a booth near the front. "Hey," one of them called out. "We need menus." Monica moved quickly. "Right away." As she handed them the menus, one of the men looked her up and down, his expression careless. "Long night?" he asked, not really asking. Monica kept her tone even. "Yes, sir. What can I get started for you?" The other man laughed. "Start with a smile," he said. She gave one. The same one she gave everyone. Practiced, measured, safe. But Jaden saw it. The difference. Daniel did too. The men placed their order, loud and impatient, just snapping their fingers once when Monica turned away too quickly. She didn't react, just kept moving, always moving. At the counter, Rick chuckled under his breath. "Keep 'em happy," he muttered. Monica didn't answer. She didn't need to. Daniel's hand tightened slightly around his glass, just for a moment, then relaxed. He stood again, walked toward Jaden's table. "Hey," he said quietly. Jaden looked up. "You ever help out here?" Jaden shrugged. "Sometimes." Daniel nodded. "You're good at watching things." Jaden tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Daniel smiled slightly. "You notice more than most people." Jaden thought about that. then said, "My mom says you have to, if you don't have much." Daniel's smile faded just a little. "Yeah," he said. "That's true." A crash came from the kitchen, and a plate dropped. Rick's voice followed immediately. "Careful back there. That comes out of somebody's pay." The room went still again, just for a second, then back to normal, like it never happened. Daniel looked toward the sound, then back at Jaden. "Does it always feel like this in here?" he asked. Jaden nodded slowly. "Yeah." A pause. Then, "But my mom says it won't be like this forever." Daniel studied him. "And you believe her?" Jaden didn't hesitate. "Yeah." Daniel nodded. He wanted to say something else, something reassuring, something bigger. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded bill, set it gently on Jaden's table. "For you," he said. Jaden frowned. "I don't need—" "It's not for you," Daniel said softly. It's for her." Jaden looked down at the money, then back at Daniel. "You sure?" Daniel nodded. Jaden took it carefully, like it mattered, because it did. Across the room, Monica glanced over, saw the exchange. Her eyes met Daniel's. For a second. Just a second. There was something there. Not gratitude. Not suspicion. Something quieter. Something that didn't have a name yet. Daniel gave a small nod, then stepped back, returning to his table. Like none of it was important. Like none of it needed attention. Outside, the wind howled louder, rattling the windows harder this time. Inside, the lights flickered once, then steadied. The older man finished his meal slowly, every bite careful, like he didn't want it to end. The loud customers kept talking. Rick kept counting. Monica kept moving. Jaden kept watching. And Daniel stayed. Not because he had nowhere to go, but because he had decided he wasn't leaving this unfinished. Not this time. The clock on the wall ticked past 9. Most of the customers had left, the noise fading into a low hum of distant traffic and the occasional clink of dishes being stacked in the back. The neon sign outside buzzed faintly, its red glow leaking through the windows like something tired but stubborn. Monica wiped down the last table near the front, her movements slower now. The rush was over, but the work wasn't. It never was. Rick stood at the counter again, flipping through receipts, tapping numbers into an old register that looked like it had seen too many years and not enough repairs. He moved with a kind of careless rhythm, like nothing here really mattered as long as it kept running. Daniel stayed seated. He hadn't touched much of his food. Instead, he watched how the night ended, watched who stayed, watched what changed when most people left, because that was when the truth usually showed up. Jaden sat quietly now, his head resting against the back of the booth. His eyes were heavy, blinking slower each time. The notebook lay open beside him, the blue crayon still in his hand. Monica glanced over. "You tired, baby?" she asked softly. Jaden nodded. "Yeah." She smiled, walking over and brushing her hand gently over his hair. "Just a little longer, okay? Then we go home." "Okay." He didn't complain. He never did. Daniel noticed that too. Monica turned back toward the counter. "Rick," she said, her voice calm but firm. I need to talk to you again." Rick didn't look up. "You already did." "I know," she said, "but I really need to know when I'm getting paid." Rick sighed loudly, like the question itself was an inconvenience. "I told you." Next week, Monica finished quietly. Rick finally looked up, something sharper in his eyes now. You got a problem with that? Monica stood still, not defensive, not aggressive, just steady. I just need to plan, she said. That's all. Rick leaned back, folding his arms. You planning to quit? He asked. No. Then what's the issue? Monica hesitated. The room felt smaller, quieter. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to fade. I have rent due, she said, and groceries, and you got a job. Rick cut in. His voice carried now, louder, not shouting, but enough. You think this place runs itself? He added. You think money just shows up because you want it? Monica didn't move, didn't look away. I worked for it, she said. The words were simple, but they landed differently this time. Rick's expression shifted. Not anger. Something colder. You want to keep working here, he said slowly. You'll wait like everybody else. Daniel's eyes flickered. Everybody else. He glanced toward the kitchen. 2 workers stood there, silent, pretending not to listen. One of them looked down at the floor. The other kept scrubbing the same pan over and over. Neither spoke. Neither stepped in. Monica nodded once. I understand, she said, but her voice had changed. Just slightly. Less certain. Less steady. Rick turned away like the conversation was over. Like it didn't matter, but like it never had. Daniel stood. The chair behind him scraped softly against the floor. Rick glanced up. What now? He muttered. Daniel walked toward the counter. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. He placed both hands lightly on the surface. Quick question, he said. Rick frowned. What? You keep records of hours worked? Rick's eyes narrowed. Why? Daniel shrugged. Just curious? Rick gave a short laugh. This ain't your business. Daniel nodded. That's fair. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a few bills, set them on the counter. For the food, he said. Rick glanced at the money, then back at Daniel. You overpaid. Daniel didn't respond. Rick scooped up the cash anyway, stuffed it into the register, or at least, most of it. Daniel noticed. Again. Rick didn't even try to hide it, or didn't think he needed to, because who was going to say anything? Daniel stepped back, turned. His eyes met Monica's. Just for a moment. There was something there now, something heavier. She didn't know him, didn't trust him. But she had seen enough to know. He had seen everything. Jaden stirred in his seat. Mom? He murmured. I'm here, Monica said quickly, moving back to him. Daniel watched her kneel beside her son, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Everything in her posture softened. Everything in her face changed. This was who she really was. Not the version that smiled through complaints. Not the version that nodded through threats. This. Right here. Daniel turned toward the door. The night air pushed in as he stepped outside. Cold, sharp, real. He took a breath, then reached into his jacket. Chai pulled out his phone. This time, he didn't hesitate. He dialed. The line rang once, twice, then, Yeah? A voice answered. I need a review, Daniel said. A pause. Of what? Daniel looked back through the window, at the diner, at Rick, at Monica, at Jaden. Everything, he said. The voice on the other end shifted, serious now. You found something? Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on the scene inside. Not yet, he said. Another pause, then, but I will. He ended the call, slipped the phone back into his pocket. The neon sign flickered again above the door. Lawson's Pit BBQ. Daniel looked at it for a long moment, then turned away, back toward the street. But not to leave. Not yet. Because now, this wasn't just a place he had passed through. It was a pattern. And patterns always led somewhere. But the question was, how far did this one go? Rain began sometime after midnight. Not heavy at first, just a steady tapping against the diner windows, soft enough to ignore if you were busy, loud enough to notice if you weren't. It streaked the glass in uneven lines, blurring the neon sign outside into something that looked almost unreal. Inside, the diner felt smaller, quieter, like the walls had pulled in just a little closer. Daniel returned the next evening, same time, same seat. He didn't rush in, didn't announce himself. He just stepped inside, shaking the rain from his jacket, taking in the room with a single glance. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same, because now he knew what to look for. Monica was already moving between tables, her steps just as quick, just as practiced. But there was something different tonight. A slight hesitation, a pause before she smiled, a breath she held a second too long. Rick stood behind the counter, louder than usual, more impatient, like something had already started to press on him, even if he didn't know what yet. Jaden sat in the same corner booth, his notebook open again, though he wasn't drawing this time. He watched his mom more than anything else. Daniel noticed that. He slid into his seat, ordered the same thing. Didn't need the menu. Monica approached. "Evening," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes lingered on him for just a second longer than before. "You came back," she added. Daniel gave a small nod. "Yeah. You want the usual? Please." She wrote it down, though she didn't need to. There was a moment. Brief, quiet. It's like both of them were aware of something neither of them said. Then she turned away. The rain picked up outside, louder now, tapping against the roof in uneven rhythm. A group of customers entered, shaking water from their coats, bringing noise with them. Rick perked up immediately. "Table near the front," he called. "Let's go." Monica moved faster. The night started to build again. Orders stacked. Voices overlapped. The tension returned. Daniel watched. Waited. The moment didn't take long. It never did. A tray slipped. Not dramatically. Not loud enough to stop the room. But enough. A plate tilted. A side of beans slid off and hit the floor with a dull splash. The sound cut through the noise just enough. Monica froze. Only for a second. Then she bent down quickly, grabbing napkins. "I'm sorry," she said. But she wasn't apologizing to a customer. Rick was already moving toward her. "You serious right now?" he snapped. His voice carried, too loud this time. Heads turned. "I'll clean it," Monica said, still crouched. "That's not the point," Rick said. His tone sharpened. "You think food just grows back? You think this stuff's free?" Monica stood slowly. "I said I'll clean it." Rick stepped closer. Too close. "Yeah, and you'll pay for it too," he said. The room shifted. The air changed. Monica blinked. What?" "Comes out your pay," Rick said flatly. "I haven't even been paid yet," she said. It slipped out, before she could stop it. The words hung there, heavier than anything else in the room. Rick smiled, but it wasn't a good smile. "That's your problem, not mine." A chair creaked, when someone shifted in their seat. No one spoke. No one stepped in. Monica looked around, just for a second, like she was hoping someone would say something, but no one did. They never did. Her shoulders lowered slightly, not defeated, but tired. "I worked for that," she said quietly. Rick's expression hardened. "And you'll keep working if you know what's good for you," he replied. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. The kind that made people look at their plates instead of at each other. And then, a small voice. "She worked for that." Jaden. The words were the same, but now, they landed harder. Every head turned. Rick blinked. Slow, like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "What did you say?" he asked. Jaden didn't shrink, didn't look away. "She worked for that," he repeated. Monica turned quickly. "Oh, Jaden," but it was too late. Rick let out a short laugh. "You got your kid talking back now?" he said. His tone carried something sharp, something ugly. Monica stepped forward. "He didn't mean—" "I know exactly what he meant," Rick cut in. He looked down at Jaden. "Kid, you don't know how this works." Jaden held his gaze. "You don't either," he said softly. The room froze. Completely. Rick's face changed. Not loud. Not explosive. Just colder. "Watch your mouth," he said. Daniel stood. Slow. Deliberate. The chair scraped again. But this time, everyone heard it. He stepped forward. Not rushing. Not aggressive. Just certain. "That's enough," Daniel said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, because it didn't need volume. Rick turned, annoyed, then confused, then something else. "You got something to say?" Rick asked. Daniel stopped a few feet away. Close enough, but not threatening. "That's not how this ends," he said. The same words. But now, they meant something different. Rick scoffed. "And who are you supposed to be?" Daniel didn't answer. Didn't give a name. Didn't explain. He just looked at him. And in that look, there was no hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. Rick laughed again, but it sounded forced this time. "You don't work here," he said, "so stay out of it." Daniel nodded slightly. "You're right," he said. A pause. Then, "But I'm not staying out of this." The rain outside grew louder, beating against the windows. The neon light flickered again. Inside, no one moved. Monica stood between them, her breath uneven, her hands still. Jaden watched, eyes wide, but not scared, just waiting. Rick shook his head. "You got 5 seconds to sit back down," he said. Daniel didn't move, didn't step back, didn't raise his voice. He just stood there. And that was what changed everything. Because for the first time, someone wasn't backing down. The silence stretched. Long. Uncomfortable. Then, Rick turned away. "Whatever," he muttered. He walked back to the counter. Like it didn't matter. Like none of it mattered. But it did. Everyone felt it. Monica exhaled slowly. She looked at Daniel, confused, grateful, uncertain. "Thank you," she said quietly. Daniel gave a small nod, then stepped back, returning to his seat. Like it was over. Like nothing had happened. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Because something had just broken. Not loudly. Not visibly. But enough. Enough to change the balance. Enough to make people look up. Enough to make someone realize. This time, the silence didn't hold. It didn't shatter. It didn't explode. But something inside that room shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. The kind of shift that didn't make noise, but made people feel it in their chest. The rain outside kept falling, harder now, streaking down the windows like lines that refused to be erased. The neon sign buzzed overhead, flickering again, then steadying, as if even it was holding its breath. No one spoke. Not right away. Monica stood where she was, her hands still at her sides, her eyes moving between Daniel and Rick, like she was trying to understand what had just happened and what it meant. Jaden didn't sit back down. He stayed where he was, small but steady, and his chin slightly raised, his fingers still holding the edge of the table like it was something solid in a room that suddenly wasn't. Rick reached the counter again, but he didn't lean like before. Didn't relax. He grabbed a stack of receipts, shuffled them too quickly, then set them down again like they didn't matter. Because right now, they didn't. He turned back slowly, looked at Daniel. Longer this time, trying to figure him out. "You done?" Rick asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't calm either. Daniel remained standing, hands at his sides. No clenched fists, no raised shoulders, just still. "I'm not here to argue," Daniel said. Rick let out a short breath. "Good," he replied, "because I don't have time for it." Daniel nodded slightly. "I can tell." Rick's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean?" Daniel didn't answer directly. Instead, he glanced toward the kitchen, then the register, then back at Rick. "Just means you're busy," he said. Rick took a step closer. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "You don't know how things work around here." Daniel met his gaze. "You're right," he said. A pause. Then, "But I'm learning." Rick laughed again. But this time, it didn't sound confident. It sounded like something covering uncertainty. "You don't learn this place in one night," he said. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Maybe not," he replied. "But patterns are easy to see." The word hung there. Patterns. Rick didn't respond right away. He just stared, trying to decide if this man was guessing or if he knew something. Behind him, one of the kitchen workers shifted again, and glancing up for just a second before looking back down. Monica noticed. Daniel noticed too. Rick noticed that Daniel noticed, and that was the moment something changed. "You some kind of inspector?" Rick asked suddenly. The question came out sharper than he intended. Too fast. Too direct. Daniel didn't smile. Didn't react. "No," he said. Rick exhaled. Just slightly. Like tension he didn't realize he was holding had loosened. "Then you're just a customer," Rick said. "And customers eat. They don't interfere." Daniel nodded. "That's one way to look at it." Rick scoffed. "It's the only way that matters here." Daniel looked around the room, at the tables, at the workers, at Monica, at Jaden, then back at Rick. "Not anymore," he said quietly. The words didn't land like a challenge. Oh, they landed like a statement. Simple. Final. Rick shook his head. "You think you're going to come in here and fix something?" he asked. "This place has been running just fine." Daniel's eyes didn't leave his. "For who?" he asked. That That hit. Not loud, not obvious, but deep enough, Rick's jaw tightened. "That's not your concern," he said. Daniel didn't argue, didn't push. He just stepped back, turned slightly, and walked back to his table. Like he was done. Like the conversation had ended. But it hadn't. Not really. Because now, everyone was watching. Not openly, not directly, but they felt it. That something had shifted. That someone had said what no one else had said, and didn't take it back. Monica moved again. Slowly at first. Then back into her rhythm. But it wasn't the same. And her steps carried something new now. Not confidence. Not yet. But awareness. Like she had seen something she couldn't unsee. Jaden sat back down. His fingers went back to his notebook. But he didn't draw. He just stared at the page. Thinking. The room returned to motion. Orders resumed. Plates moved. Voices picked up. But underneath it, something remained. Like a low hum no one could ignore. Daniel sat quietly. Picked up his fork. Took another bite. Still didn't taste it. His mind was elsewhere. Tracking. Connecting. Confirming. Rick moved behind the counter again. But now, he checked the room more often. Looked up more. Watched Daniel when he thought Daniel wasn't looking. Because something about him didn't sit right. Didn't fit. And Rick didn't like things he couldn't read. Minutes passed. Then more. But the tension didn't disappear. It settled. Deeper. Quieter. More dangerous. Daniel finished his meal. Set the fork down. Reached for his glass. Took a sip. Then stood again. Not abrupt. Not rushed. He walked to the counter. Placed cash down. Exact this time. No extra. Rick glanced at it. Then at him. "See?" Rick said. "That wasn't so hard." Daniel looked at him. For a second. Long enough to make it clear. He heard him. Then he turned away. No response. No reaction. Just silence. The kind that said more than words ever could. He walked toward the door. Paused briefly near Jaden. "Take care of her," he said softly. Jaden nodded. "I always do." Daniel gave a small nod, then stepped outside. The rain hit him immediately. Cold. Sharp. Unforgiving. But he didn't flinch. He stood there for a moment, not letting it fall. Letting the noise of it fill the space. Because inside, he had everything he needed. Not proof, not yet. But enough. Enough to know this wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. This was built, structured, maintained. And systems like that, they didn't fall apart on their own. They had to be broken. Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone again. This time, he didn't call. He opened a message thread, typed slowly, deliberately, names, dates, details, patterns. He hit send. The screen went dark. He slipped the phone away, looked back at the diner one more time, at the flickering neon, at the place where nothing had changed, and everything had. Inside, Monica wiped down another table. Jaden finally picked up his crayon again. Rick counted money, the same as always. But Daniel knew something they didn't, something none of them could see yet. This wasn't a moment. It wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't over. It was just the beginning. The rain didn't stop that night. It followed them home. Dripping from rooftops, pooling in the cracks of the sidewalk, tapping softly against the narrow windows of the small apartment where Monica and Jaden lived. The building sat at the edge of a tired block, brick worn thin, paint chipped away by years of weather and time. Inside, the air was warmer, but not by much. Monica closed the door behind them and leaned against it for just a second, her eyes closing briefly as if she could press the weight of the day back outside. Then she straightened, like she always did. "You hungry?" she asked. Jaden shook his head. "I'm okay." She nodded, though she knew that probably meant something else. She walked into the kitchen, if it could be called that. A narrow counter, a small stove, a fridge that hummed louder than it should. She opened it, looked inside, then closed it again. Not much had changed. Not enough. Jaden sat at the small table, pulling out his notebook again. He flipped through the pages slowly, stopping at the one with the wings. He ran his fingers lightly over the blue crayon lines. "Mom," he said. "Yeah?" He hesitated. Then, "Why didn't you say anything?" Monica paused, her back still turned. She knew what he meant. She always did. She took a breath, then turned around, leaning against the counter. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "saying something makes things worse." Jaden frowned. "Oh, but he was wrong." "I know." "Then why?" "Because we need this job." The words came out quieter this time. Not firm, not certain. Just true. Jaden looked down. His fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. "He didn't have to talk to you like that." "Appa," he said. Monica smiled softly. "I've heard worse." "That doesn't make it okay." She looked at him, really looked. And for a moment, she didn't have an answer. Because he was right. But being right didn't always change anything. She walked over, pulling out a chair and sitting across from him. "You did a brave thing tonight," she said. Jaden shrugged. "I just told the truth." Monica nodded. "Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do." A pause, then, "What about him?" Jaden asked. "The man." Monica's eyes shifted slightly, and she had been thinking about that too. "I don't know," she admitted. "He came back," Jaden said. "Yeah." "He helped?" "Yeah." Jaden tilted his head. "He's not like the others." Monica looked down at her hands, then back at her son. "No," she said quietly. "He's not." Outside, a car passed, its headlights sweeping briefly across the walls before disappearing again. The room fell into a soft silence, not empty, just still. Monica reached over, brushing her hand across Jaden's hair again. "Get some sleep," she said. "You've got school in the morning." Jaden nodded. He stood, grabbing his notebook, then paused. "Mom? Yeah? You're still a superhero." Monica smiled. This time, it didn't feel like something she had to force. "Go to bed," she said gently. He disappeared down the short hallway. The door creaked shut behind him. Monica sat there for a moment longer, then stood. Walked to the window. Rain slid down the glass in uneven lines. She rested her hand against it. Cool. Quiet. For the first time all day. She let herself feel it. The exhaustion. The frustration. The weight of everything she didn't say. Her reflection stared back at her, faint and blurred by the water. She didn't look like the woman in Jaden's drawing. No wings, no strength that felt like it could carry anything. Just tired. Her phone buzzed softly on the counter. She turned, walked over, picked it up, a message. Unknown number. She hesitated, then opened it. You're not wrong to ask. Don't stop. No name, no explanation. Just that. Monica stared at the screen. Her heart beat a little faster. Not fear. Not exactly, but something else. Something unfamiliar. She typed back slowly. Who is this? The dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again, and then nothing. No reply. Monica lowered the phone. Set it down. The room felt different now. Still small, still quiet. But not the same. Because something had entered it. Something she didn't understand yet. Something that didn't belong to her routine. Across the city, in a quiet hotel room overlooking streets still wet from the storm, Daniel Reed sat at a desk with his laptop open. The screen glowed against the darkness. Rows of numbers, documents, records, names. He moved through them with precision, calm, focused, not rushed, because this wasn't guesswork anymore. It was confirmation. He clicked through payment logs, cross-referenced dates, matched hours worked with money reported. And there it was. The gap, clear, consistent, deliberate. He leaned back slightly, exhaled, then reached for his phone. Another message. Sent. Short. Direct. Start the audit. He didn't wait for a reply. He didn't need one. He closed the laptop. The room fell quiet again. Outside, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement, stretching into long lines that shimmered with every passing car. Daniel stood, walked to the window, looked out. Somewhere in that city, a woman was still trying to hold everything together. Somewhere, a boy still believed things would get better. And somewhere, a man thought nothing would ever change. Daniel's reflection stared back at him, calm, still, certain, because now, things were already in motion. And once they started, there was no going back. Not for Rick. Not for the system he thought would protect him. And not for the quiet that had kept everything hidden. Because the storm outside wasn't the one that mattered anymore. The real one was just beginning. Morning came without sunlight. Clouds hung low over the city, pressing everything down into a gray stillness. The streets were damp, the air heavy, and the puddles from the night before reflected nothing but dull sky and passing tires. Monica stood outside Lawson's Pit BBQ for a moment before going in. She held her keys in one hand, her other hand resting lightly against the door. Something didn't feel right. Not wrong. Just different. The message from the night before hadn't left her mind. You're not wrong to ask. Don't stop. She hadn't told Jaden, and hadn't told anyone, but it stayed with her, like a voice she couldn't place. She pushed the door open. The bell chimed. Inside, the diner looked the same. Same tables, same smell, same low hum of the refrigerator. But the air felt tighter. Rick was already there, pacing behind the counter. Not leaning, not relaxed. Pacing. His phone was pressed to his ear. No, I told you, just fix it, he said sharply. I don't care how it looks, just fix it. He turned as Monica walked in, paused, then lowered his voice. I'll call you back. He hung up, slipped the phone into his pocket. You're late, he said. Monica glanced at the clock. She wasn't. I'm on time, she said calmly. Rick shrugged. Then get to work. No smile, no small talk, just tension. Monica nodded, tied her apron, moved into the kitchen, and the other workers were already there. Quiet. More than usual. One of them, Luis, avoided her eyes completely. The older waitress from the night before wiped down the same spot on the counter again and again, her movements distracted. "What's going on?" Monica asked softly. Luis shook his head. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Everyone felt it. The door opened again. The bell chimed. This time, it didn't sound the same. Two people stepped inside. Not customers, not regulars. Their clothes were clean, pressed, professional, not expensive, but official. They didn't look around like they were deciding where to sit. They looked around like they were deciding what mattered. Rick noticed immediately. His posture changed. "Can I help you?" he called out, forcing something close to a smile. The woman stepped forward. Rick Lawson?" Rick hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." She reached into her bag, pulled out a folder. "We're here for a labor compliance review." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed, heavy, immediate. Rick blinked. "I think you've got the wrong place," he said quickly. The man beside her shook his head. "We don't." The room went quiet. Not gradually, all at once. Luis stopped moving. The older waitress froze mid-wipe. Monica stood still, a tray in her hand. Rick let out a short laugh. "This is a small business," he said. We'll need your payroll records," the woman said, cutting through his sentence without raising her voice. Rick's smile tightened. "Look, I don't know who sent you." "That's not relevant," the man said. Rick's eyes flickered, just for a second, toward the back, toward the register, toward the door. Monica noticed. Daniel's words from the night before echoed in her mind. Patterns. Rick turned back. "You can't just walk in here," he said. "We can," the woman replied. She opened the folder, pulled out a document, placed it on the counter. Rick looked at it, didn't touch it, didn't need to, because now he understood. The air shifted again, but this time it didn't settle. It tightened. Monica stepped forward slightly, not toward Rick, toward them. Her heart was beating faster. Not fear. Something else, something close to hope. "We'll need to speak with employees as well," the man said. Rick laughed again. Too loud. "They're busy. We'll keep it brief." Rick's jaw tightened. "They don't have anything to say." The woman turned her head, but looked directly at Monica. "Do you?" she asked. Monica froze. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Rick stepped forward quickly. "She's new," he said. "Doesn't know anything about—" "I've been here 6 months," Monica said. The words came out before she could stop them. Rick turned sharply. "Monica!" But she didn't look at him. She looked at them. At the people who had just walked in like something was finally allowed to change. Her hands trembled slightly. But she didn't lower them. She didn't step back. "I haven't been paid in 3 weeks," she said. Silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't move. Rick's face changed. Completely. "You want to keep your job," he said quietly. "You need to think real careful about what you say next." Monica heard him, felt it. The old instinct, to stop, to step back, to nod, to let it go. But something had already shifted. Something from the night before. From the message. From Jaden's voice. From the man who didn't raise his voice. She took a breath. "I've asked every week," she continued. "He keeps saying next week." Rick shook his head. "She's confused. I'm not confused, Monica said. Her voice was stronger now. Not loud, but clear. Luis looked up. The older waitress stopped moving. The room watched. The man with the folder wrote something down. The woman nodded slightly. Anyone else? She asked. A pause. Long. Heavy. Then Luis spoke. Me too, he said quietly. Rick turned. Luis. But Luis didn't stop. 2 weeks, he added. The older waitress looked up. Her eyes moved from Rick to Monica, then to the inspectors, then back again. She swallowed. I haven't been paid in over a month, she said. Rick stepped back, like the floor had shifted beneath him. Okay, he said quickly. Okay, we can figure this out. We will, the woman replied. But not like this. Rick looked around, at the room, at the people who had always stayed quiet, who were no longer quiet. And for the first time, he didn't look in control. Outside, the clouds broke slightly, not enough for sunlight, but enough for something to change. Inside. Monica stood still, her hands no longer shaking, her shoulders no longer lowered. For the first time, she wasn't waiting, and somewhere, she knew. This didn't just happen. Someone had opened this door. The question was, who? It lingered in the air even after the inspectors spread out across the diner. Papers were pulled. Questions were asked. Those names were written down in neat, quiet handwriting that felt more powerful than anything loud ever could be. Rick moved faster now. Too fast. Opening drawers, shuffling receipts, grabbing folders that suddenly didn't look as organized as they used to. This is a misunderstanding, he said again, his voice sharper, thinner. We've just had some delays, that's all. The woman didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She just kept writing. Delays can be reviewed, she said calmly. Records help clarify that. Rick forced a laugh. Yeah, well, records take time. Then we'll take the time, the man beside her replied. Monica stood near the edge of the room, watching it all unfold like she had stepped into someone else's life. Her heart was still racing, but not from fear anymore, from something else, something unfamiliar. But for the first time, she wasn't bracing for what might happen. She was waiting to see what would. Luis stood beside her. He didn't say anything, but he didn't look down anymore either. The older waitress leaned against the counter, her hands still, her eyes fixed on the folder in the inspector's hand, like it held answers she had stopped believing in a long time ago. The door chimed. Everyone turned. Daniel stepped inside. No rush, no hesitation. Just the same quiet presence as before. But now, he wasn't invisible. Rick saw him immediately. His expression tightened. You, he said. Daniel didn't respond. He walked in, letting the door close behind him. The sound echoed slightly louder than usual. The inspectors noticed him. One of them gave a small nod. Professional, recognizing. Daniel returned it, subtle, but clear. Rick caught that. His eyes flickered between them. Something clicked. What is this? Rick asked, his voice rising. You bring them here? Daniel stopped near the center of the room, close enough to be heard, far enough to stay calm. I didn't bring anything, he said. Rick scoffed. Don't play games with me. Daniel met his gaze. I don't play games. A pause. Then, he reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, tapped once, turned the screen. Do you recognize this? He asked. Rick frowned, then leaned forward slightly. The screen showed a video. Grainy, but clear enough. The counter. The register. Rick's hand moving. Bills separated. Some going in, some not. Rick stepped back. "Where'd you get that?" he snapped. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the inspectors. Out they stepped closer. The woman took the phone, watched, then handed it to her partner. Neither of them spoke, but their expressions changed. Not surprised, just confirmed. Rick shook his head. "That doesn't prove anything," he said quickly. "That's out of context. There are multiple recordings," Daniel said. Calm, even, measured. Rick's voice sharpened. "You've been watching me?" Daniel didn't blink. "I've been paying attention." The words landed heavier than anything else. Rick laughed again, but it didn't sound like laughter anymore. It sounded like something breaking. "You think you can just walk in here? Record things? Make accusations?" Daniel took a step forward. Not aggressive, just certain. "I don't have to accuse anything," he said. He gestured lightly toward the inspectors. "They'll handle that." Rick looked at them, then back at Daniel, then around the room, at the employees, at Monica, at Luis, at people who weren't looking away anymore. And that was what he couldn't control. "You don't even know who I am," Rick said. It came out like a warning, like it still mattered. Daniel nodded slightly. "You're right," he said. Rick paused, just for a second. Then, Daniel continued, "But I know enough." Silence, the kind that settles into your bones. Rick's breathing changed, slower, heavier, like he was trying to find ground that wasn't there anymore. "And who are you supposed to be?" Rick asked. This time, he needed the answer. Daniel didn't rush, didn't make it dramatic. He simply reached into his jacket again, pulled out a card, set it on the counter. Rick looked at it. Us at first. Nothing. Then, everything. His expression shifted. Confusion. Recognition. Disbelief. "No," he said under his breath. The name on the card sat there. Simple. Clean. But heavy. Daniel Reed. Rick looked up. Really looked this time. Not at the clothes, not at the posture. At the man. And suddenly, he saw it. The difference. The control. The quiet. "You're," Rick started. Daniel didn't let him finish. "I'm someone who invests in places like this," he said. Calm, clear, and investigates them before I do. The room felt smaller again, but not in the same way as before. This time, it felt like everything was closing in. Rick shook his head. "No," he said. This isn't." The words didn't come together, because the truth had already formed, and there was no way around it. But Monica stood frozen. Her eyes moved from Daniel to the card, and back again. The man who sat quietly, who helped without asking, who stayed when no one else did, wasn't just a man passing through. Jaden's voice echoed in her mind. "He's not like the others." She understood now. He wasn't. Not even close. The inspector stepped forward. "Mr. Lawson," she said, her voice steady, "we'll need access to all financial records immediately." Rick didn't respond. He couldn't, because whatever control he thought he had was gone. Daniel stepped back, not claiming the moment, not owning it, just letting it happen. Because this wasn't about him. It never was. It was about what had been hidden, and what was finally visible. Monica took a breath. Slow. Deep. Her hands steadied at her sides. But for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel stuck. She didn't feel like she had to wait. Because now, the truth was standing in the middle of the room, and it wasn't leaving. The question was no longer, who opened the door? The question now was, what would happen next? For a moment, nothing moved. Not Rick, not the workers, not even the inspectors. It was as if the entire room had paused, waiting for something to catch up with what had just been revealed. Then everything began again, but differently. The inspectors stepped past the counter, their presence no longer something Rick could ignore or dismiss. Drawers were opened with authority now. Papers were lifted, examined, set aside. Questions were no longer invitations. They were instructions. Rick stood off to the side, no longer pacing, was no longer in control. His hands hovered near his pockets, unsure where to go. "This isn't over," he muttered, though it sounded more like something he was trying to convince himself of. No one answered him, because for everyone else, it was already over. Monica stood near the back, her fingers curled lightly against the edge of a prep table. She watched as years of silence unraveled in front of her. Not loudly, not violently, but completely. Luis sat down for the first time since she had known him. Just sat. Like his legs had finally given him permission to rest. The older waitress wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, not hiding it anymore. And Jaden stood near the doorway, his small hand gripping the frame, watching everything with wide, steady eyes. Daniel remained where he was. Quiet. Still, not stepping forward, not stepping back. Because this part didn't belong to him. It belonged to them. Minutes passed, then more. The room slowly emptied of tension, replaced by something else, something lighter. Not relief, not yet, but the beginning of it. The inspector approached Monica. "Ma'am," she said gently, "we're going to document everything. We'll make sure everyone here is accounted for." Monica nodded. Her voice didn't come right away. When it did, it was soft. "Thank you." The inspector gave a small, understanding nod. "You spoke up," she said. "That matters." Monica glanced at Jaden, then back at her. "Yeah," she said. "It does." Across the room, Rick sat down heavily on a chair. For the first time, he looked tired. Not angry, not defensive, just finished. And Daniel watched him for a moment. Not with satisfaction, not with judgment, just with clarity. Then he turned away. The door opened again, letting in a breeze that carried the faint scent of rain still lingering outside. Hours later, the diner stood quiet. Not closed, but paused. Chairs pushed in, lights dimmed, papers stacked neatly on the counter, no longer hidden. The inspectors had left. Rick had been asked to step away. The room felt empty. But not in a bad way. More like something had been cleared out. Monica stood in the center of it, her arms wrapped loosely around herself, as if she wasn't quite sure what to do with the space now that it was hers to stand in. Jaden walked over. "Are we okay?" he asked. Monica looked down at him, then knelt, pulled him into a gentle hug. "Yeah," she said. Well, and this time, it wasn't something she had to convince herself of. "Yeah, we are." Footsteps approached behind them. Monica turned. Daniel stood there. Not distant. Not separate. Just there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Monica stood. "You did this," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even a question. Just a recognition. Daniel shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "You did." Monica frowned softly. "I wouldn't have." "You would have," he said gently. A pause. Then, "You just needed someone to stay long enough to listen." The words settled between them. Jaden looked up at Daniel. "I told you," he said. "She's a superhero." Daniel smiled. This time, it reached his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "You did." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder, set it on the counter, while Monica glanced at it, then at him. "What is this?" she asked. Daniel opened it. Inside, documents, clean, organized, clear. "I made an offer this morning," he said. Monica blinked. "To who?" "To the bank," Daniel replied. A pause. Then, "I bought this place." The words didn't land all at once. They unfolded, slow, heavy, real. Monica stared at him. What?" Daniel met her gaze. "The business was already under review," he explained. "It didn't take much." Monica looked around the diner, at the tables, at the kitchen, at everything she had worked in, moved through, carried for months without anything to show for it. "You bought it," she repeated. Daniel nodded. Jaden's eyes widened. "Like, it's yours now?" Daniel smiled slightly. "For now." He looked back at Monica. "Oh, but it doesn't have to stay that way." Monica's breath caught. "I don't understand." Daniel stepped closer to the counter. Not imposing, just clear. "You've been running this place already," he said. "You know the customers. You know the work. You know what it should be." Monica shook her head slightly. "You're not just anything," Daniel said. His voice stayed calm, but firm. "You kept it going when it wasn't being treated right. That matters." Monica didn't speak, because something in her chest tightened, then loosened, then didn't know what to do next. Daniel slid a paper forward. "Manager position," he said. "Full control of operations. Fair pay. For you and for everyone." Monica stared at the page. Her hands didn't move. "I don't know if I can—" "You already have," Daniel said, and a silence followed. But it wasn't empty. It was full of everything that had led to this moment. Jaden looked up at her. "You can," he said. Simple. Certain. Monica looked down at him, then back at the diner, then at Daniel. And for the first time, she didn't see a place she had to survive. She saw a place that could be different. She took a slow breath, then reached out. Her fingers touched the paper. Lightly at first, then steady. "I'll try," she said. Daniel nodded. "That's all it takes." Outside, the clouds finally began to break. A thin line of sunlight slipped through, catching on the edge of the window and stretching across the floor in a quiet, golden line. Inside, something new had already begun. Not loud, not sudden, but real. And this time, it wasn't going to be taken away. As the sign outside still read, "Lawson's Pit BBQ," for now. But everything else felt different. The air inside the diner no longer carried that quiet pressure, that weight that had once settled into every corner. The lights seemed warmer. The space felt wider. Even the sound of footsteps echoed differently, like the room itself had been waiting for permission to breathe. Morning light spilled through the windows, soft and golden, catching dust in the air that moved slowly, gently, no longer rushed, no longer ignored. Monica stood behind the counter, not moving, just standing there. Her hands rested lightly against the surface, her fingers tracing the worn edges she knew so well. The same counter, the same scratches, the same place she had stood day after day, taking orders, holding back words, and swallowing moments that had never been hers to carry. But today, it felt like something else. Jaden stood beside her, bouncing slightly on his heels. "You're really in charge now?" he asked. Monica let out a small breath. "I guess I am." He grinned. "Told you." She smiled back. This time, it wasn't careful. It wasn't measured. It didn't come with anything behind it. It was just real. Luis walked in through the back door, holding a fresh crate of supplies. He paused when he saw Monica behind the counter, then gave a small nod. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied. No tension. No hesitation. Just normal. The older waitress followed, her hair tied back neatly, her posture straighter than before. She glanced around the diner, taking it in like she was seeing it for the first time. "It feels different," she said. Aunt Monica nodded. "Yeah," she said, "it does." They got to work, but not the way they used to. There was no rush born from fear, no silence forced by pressure, just movement, natural, steady, intentional. Menus were straightened, tables wiped. The grill warmed up slowly, the familiar scent of BBQ filling the air again. But now it felt like something welcoming, not something heavy. Jaden sat in his usual spot. But today, he didn't just watch. He drew, carefully, focused. The blue crayon moved across the page again, but this time the lines were different, stronger, clearer. He added something new, a sign above the building. Letters big and bold. "Mom's place." He looked up. "Can we call it that?" he asked. Monica laughed softly. "We'll see," she said. But her eyes lingered on the drawing. And for a moment, she didn't say no. The door chimed. The first customer walked in, then another, then more. They weren't just coming for food. They were coming back. Because word had already started to spread. Not about what had happened, but about what had changed. Monica moved between tables, her steps confident now. She greeted people, took orders, checked in. But this time, she wasn't just working. She was leading, and it showed. The customers noticed. The staff felt it. Even the space itself seemed to respond. Daniel stepped inside quietly. No one announced him. No one needed to. Jaden saw him first. "You came back," he said. Daniel smiled. "Yeah," he replied. Jaden held up his drawing. "Look." Daniel walked over, took a moment to study it. The wings were still there. But now, they weren't drawn out of hope. They were drawn like something that had already been proven. "It's perfect," Daniel said. Jaden beamed. Monica approached. She wiped her hands on her apron, new this time, clean, unmarked. "You didn't have to come," she said. Daniel shrugged slightly. "I wanted to." She nodded. There was no awkwardness, no distance, just understanding. "I was thinking," she said, glancing at the drawing. Maybe we change the sign. Daniel followed her gaze. What would you call it? He asked. Monica looked at Jaden, then back at the room, at the people, at everything that had been, and everything that could be. Something honest, she said. Daniel nodded. That's a good place to start. A customer called out. Monica turned. I'll be right there, she said, then looked back at Daniel. Thank you, she added. Simple. Clear. Enough. Daniel shook his head slightly. You don't owe me anything, he said. Monica smiled. I know, she replied, and she meant it. Because this wasn't something given. It was something reclaimed. Daniel stepped back, taking a seat like any other customer. No attention, no spotlight, just part of the room. Jaden leaned closer to him. I told you, she's a superhero, he whispered. Daniel smiled. Soft. Certain. You showed me, he said. Outside, the new sign wasn't up yet, but inside, it already existed. In the way people moved, in the way they spoke, in the way they stayed. The old silence was gone, replaced by something stronger, something warmer, something real. And somewhere in that space, a boy's quiet truth had changed everything. Most not because it was loud, not because it forced anything, but because it was heard and believed and answered. The door kept opening. People kept coming in. Light kept filling the room, and for the first time, nothing about it felt temporary. It felt like something that would last. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice, saying the truth, at the right moment, to the right person, and everything changes. If this story touched you, leave a comment. Someone out there might need to hear it too. You don't have to write anything long. Just type 1 if you believe kindness still matters, or 0 if you've ever felt overlooked like Monica. Every comment helps this story reach someone who needs it. And if you want more real stories like this, stories about quiet strength, second chances, and lives that change when no one's watching, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. Because the next story might be even closer to your heart than you think.